When am I taking on the challenge? Well, it's on the 4th of July, so I'm considering that as being Independence Day. So after the 4th of July, I have independence from all the exercise that I've been doing and all the training I've been doing ready for this event. So if you haven't heard about Half Ironman, I can understand. So Half Ironman is an endurance triathlon. It requires you to swim 1.2 miles in open water, so in a lake. It then requires you to have 10 minutes to get out of your wetsuit and get straight onto your bike to then cycle 56 miles on roads, at which point you then get another 10 minutes to get off your bike and to run a half marathon, which is 13 miles. So all that, and you have to do it within 9 hours in the day, and there's cut-off times in between. My sister had a really horrible year, so I really decided it was about time I did some fundraising, and I wanted to do some local charities that would benefit her.
Well, it was more that, you know, when I first got my diagnosis, it was a little bit obviously overwhelming at the time, and you know, my parents in particular, you know, went to the Big C to get some support, but also Brian, my husband, and I, we went and we got some leaflets to try to understand it. But it was just really nice because it was the Big C Centre in Norwich was this, I suppose, like a oasis of calm amongst all of the different appointments and all of the craziness, and it was just really nice to go there to meet the volunteers, you know, have a cup of tea, have some crisps and a banana somewhere quiet, and also speak to the specialist nurses, because the breast care nurses at the hospital were great, but then we had lots more questions and we felt we were taking up their time, so it was really good to speak to, you know, the nurses just around what to expect and what to go through. I mean, obviously, sadly, the centre closed because of COVID, which you know was I had a wig appointment booked and things like that as well, but it closed because of COVID, so we weren't able to use all of the facilities, but we had some massages booked, which would have been a nice treat amongst the chemo. So so I guess just unusual times, really.
Yeah, it was really impressive. Yeah, it was. You know, you hear so much about, I guess, the hospitals being underfunded and there not being facilities for people, and it was, you know, it was a really lovely building and nice and bright, and it was separate from the hospital, so you didn't actually feel like you were in a hospital, although it was on the grounds.
So it was quite nice, just and reassuring to be somewhere which was so close to all the different appointments and the wards and also the dispensary, without having to sit amongst lots of other, you know, I suppose other hospital patients. And this was just before COVID was really developing and everyone was understanding the risk of it, so it was nice to be somewhere which felt safe, and that was for me the main thing, was that the building felt safe compared to being in the hospital. So I had, well, I didn't, you know, we don't have any history of cancer in the family, so it was a real shock, you know, when after having found out the, you know, that I had the lump, and we got that checked out really quickly, and it, you know, the NHS were really great, and the diagnosis came back on sort of 9th of January 2020 as triple negative breast cancer, which again I didn't even know there were different types of breast cancer. It's been a huge journey, but that basically means it doesn't it doesn't respond to, you know, different sort of chemical doesn't respond to hormones, so it's sort of a very different type of one, but it also made it, you know, quite easy to treat and quite targeted.
It was just such a shock. I mean, we're both young, we're early 40s, you know, we're twins. It's just such a shock. Vicky's always looked after herself and been healthy, never that fit, but being healthy, always cared about what she eats. Whereas actually it's me that's the one who's been a bit unhealthy previously, drinking too much and things like that. But it was just such a shock. It's just horrible. You just don't know what the future's going to bring. And just the fact that you're a twin as well and the same age, it just doesn't seem right. And too young.
I suppose it was quite a shock, you know, to have the diagnosis. It's not something you think about. It's not something that, you know, is in the mind. And like I say, we, you know, for us, we don't have this family history of it, so it was even more unusual. And it was just after getting the diagnosis, they said it was aggressive and they had to act quickly, and it was like, well, how quickly? And then we got, you know, all the appointments started coming through for the next day for all the different scans and various bits, and including going to Cambridge for bone scans, something I've never even heard of. But also I had to have my wisdom teeth out as a precautionary measure, because I was starting to get wisdom teeth issues, and you can't have that during all the treatment. So I had this extra shock, and I had these super crazy days of having trackers fitted fitted into the cancer to go straight to having my wisdom teeth out at the same time as trying to actually, sort of compute what on earth is happening, all of it. And it was, it's quite overwhelming at times, and lots of people telling you how disastrous it is, and also how awful it is that you have got this treatment and the cancer diagnosis, and it's that, well, is it that bad? I don't know. And it's just the speed at which things happen was a real surprise, and having to understand and then suddenly get into what it means and start thinking forward. So a bit of a shock, and also obviously quite worrying and stressful, and not sleeping very well for the first few weeks.
One of the things I really remember you saying was just this moment of calm as soon as you stepped inside, and the fact that you got a cup of tea and biscuits, and I know you love a cup of tea and biscuits
as well. Yeah.
But just that moment of calm, it just felt really surreal in some ways.
And I was really pleased because Mum and Dad did struggle with the diagnosis to begin with. Obviously we all did, but they found it particularly hard, and they actually took themselves off down to the big sea. We didn't, me and my husband, we weren't aware, but they took themselves off there to try and talk, to people, talk it through, and it really helped them actually. And I was just really proud that they did something like that.
Well, first of all, when Victoria was diagnosed with cancer, we were really, really shocked that somebody so young could get it. In fact, we were devastated. We didn't know anything about cancer at all, so we thought the best thing that we could do was to come down to the Big C Centre in Norwich and find out more about it and the type of cancer she had. The first occasion we went there, we saw this lovely chap whose name was Julian, and he was very sympathetic and fully understand her and our predicament, and he was very supportive.
And very helpful.
Very helpful, yeah. He gave us quite a wealth of booklets to read to find out more about it, so we recommended to Victoria that she comes down to the Big C Centre with us on another occasion so that she could get more support, because I think that's the greatest thing that anybody can have is support for somebody who's in cancer, who's experienced cancer. It's a very difficult situation, and the support that's given to people with cancer matters no end. It's really, really important.
To everyone that's surrounding them.
Yeah.
It's not just the person who's got it, it's everybody.
So,
everyone.
again, we went down to Big C with Victoria.
And Brian.
And Brian, yeah. And she got a certain amount of support, but unfortunately at that time COVID just set in, and everything was completely new and different, and Big C had to close. We were given a phone number of somebody who we could contact, and they were there for us, and I'm sure that now that perhaps they're open, anybody who's relatives, whatever, that's suffering from cancer would be ideal to go there and get the support that's needed. Victoria was very strong. She had the support of Brian, her husband, who did marvels for her, really looked after, cared for her, and and Rachael we're proud of because she was able to go on this what do you call it? Iron Man thing to raise funds.
Yeah, taking an awful lot of training and such like, but she's getting an awful lot of sponsorship, and it's brilliant that people are sponsoring her because it is an effort, but it's her way of attributing something towards Big C and the fight against cancer generally.